All right, today is Tuesday, March 3rd, 2020, and today we have a great podcast. We have Pat Jesse on, and we're going to talk about how Michigan could be the best state to hunt whitetails in. Welcome to the Fall Podcast. I am your host, Aaron Blasey, and this is episode 104. And on the other line is my trusty, busty co-host, Justin Fabian.
Did you say,
what's going on, man?
Did you say trusty busty?
Yeah, busty. Oh, you're kind of busty in a way.
Yeah, it's pumping the iron, man. Getting swole up in the upper regions of the body.
The man pecs. Yeah. The man boobs.
Man boobs. Not the dad bod boobs, but the good kind.
But that is not what today's podcast is all about. Today's podcast is totally off script from the questions that I formulated for our podcast guest, but that's all right. Today we do have a fellow Michigander on. His name is Pat Jesse. He actually grew up in the area that I grew up. I don't know him. I've known of him. We've never crossed paths, which is pretty crazy, but we talk a lot about Michigan and Michigan deer hunting, and I mean that's kind of broad. I know that, but like we do cover quite a bit in this, and we'll probably do a part 2 sometime, just because we didn't get to a lot of the questions that we had wrote down. But I think it was a pretty good conversation. It does get a little lengthy, but I think we hit on some good points. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, there's definitely some good points in there. I mean, it's evident that Pat brings a lot of knowledge to the table, and I know for you and people in your region, your people up there, your tribe, you guys kind of know who he is. So it's kind of cool for me to just hear it as someone who doesn't really know who he is, but he's a deer hunter, man, through and through. There's no doubt about that. He plays by the rules 24/7, whether it's food plots, soil pH, or how to shut your door in the driveway, so it's, some people might call it overkill on a few of the aspects, but the guy's got a reputation for killing big deer, so he's obviously doing something right.
Yeah, he does. And if you guys have never heard of Pat, he has been very successful, in what he's been doing, and he does the things he does for a reason. And if you knew his track record in the deer that he kills year in and year out, whether it's in Michigan or out of state, I mean, he does have a good track record. He's killed some very good deer here in Michigan and out of state. I mean, he doesn't really want to toot his own horn, I don't think, but I guess I will a little bit. And from what I know of him, he's a very solid outdoorsman and just knows what he's doing, and he does things for a reason. And he gets into that, like Justin said, about all the way down to how you close your door in the driveway of the farm. So it's pretty crazy, but good conversation all in all. And I don't know. I guess that's all I got to say about that. And I guess we can probably kick it over to that interview, because people are probably sick of us talking.
Yeah, I hope not. I gotta talk about one more thing. I'm sorry. I'm gonna keep this going for a minute.
No, you're good. You're good.
I gotta plug ABB again. I know we kind of brought it up last week, but I had a great buying experience with Bryant over the weekend. Actually, it was in the middle of the week. I don't even think I told you about this yet, but so I ordered a VXR about 2 months ago now, and I'm getting down to the point where it's going to be shipping any day now. So I keep checking the credit card statement, watching for that bill to come through. But
Sure.
I've been kind of planning my build here the last few days, and I text Bryant and I was like, "Hey, is it possible to twist 3 colors of a string?" And he was like, "Yeah, man, absolutely. What are you looking for?" So I sent him the color codes and everything, and he was like, "Dude, that's gonna look sweet." He's like, "I'm gonna put this order in tomorrow morning." And I mean, they don't advertise tricolor strings, and it's just a testament to the customization that they have available to anybody. So keep it in mind. Really good service, quick order, and he accommodated exactly what I asked for.
Yeah, all those guys over there, I've said it before. You and I have both said it. And they are just solid to work with.
Yeah.
I mean, whoever you want to talk to, whether it's Tim or Jerry, the owner, or Bryant, and those are the guys that I know the most, so that's the only thing I can really speak to. But those guys know their stuff. Their customer service is second to none. And usually, I mean, they're like 2-day shipping. Like, if you order a string today, I mean, 2 days, you're going to, 2 or 3 days, you're going to have it.
Yep.
So which is nice.
Yeah, if you look at the invoice when it comes in, or when you get that email about your shipping, I mean, I live in Iowa, and those strings are coming from Ohio. Every string I've got is come second day air. So I was like, wow, that's okay, sweet, thank you.
and we're not getting any special treatment though either, even though we know them, personally. We're not, like, if you order one, you're getting it. I mean, you're getting it quick. So, and they make a quality string, a really good. And honestly, I recommend the Platinums. That's me. But I'm not saying any of the other strings, whether it's the Pursuit or the Premium, they're not bad strings at all. All of them are. My dad, he got a Pursuit. I actually got a Pursuit string for my backup bow. They're solid strings. I just like the little more customization that you can get in the Platinum.
Yep.
And I don't know. I just like dealing with them, honestly.
Yeah,
so
I do too.
it's a string I'm going to shoot forever.
Yeah, same here, man. I'm looking forward to TAC. You and I are shooting together, and I'm going to be with your whole crew of guys, and Brian's going to be joining us on that shoot. So I'm looking forward to a fun weekend of that, and just kind of kicking it with everybody for a couple of days and breaking a bunch of arrows.
Yeah, June can't get here quick enough.
I know.
Total Archery Challenge Michigan edition is going to be lit.
Lit. Might have to throw a video together. Like we put the podcast on YouTube, but maybe that'll require a little extra something.
We'll do a video. We'll do one. All right. Well, this intro is getting a little lengthy. Let's get over this interview with Pat, and let's get this thing started. All right, we're back today on another episode of the Fall Podcast, and today we have Pat Jesse on from Michigan. Pat, how's it going, man?
Pretty good.
Good deal. So before we do get into this, I do want you to let the listeners know, who you are, what you do, and where you're from.
Sure. So I'm originally from Clare, Michigan. Born and raised just north of Clare, and from that point, graduating high school and moved into the Mount Pleasant area. So I've been basically mid-Michigan most of my life. Been in sales pretty much all my adult career here has been, one way or another, been in the sales world. So I'm currently employed AIS Construction Equipment. So for those of you in Michigan are pretty aware of who that is.
Yep.
I get to travel Michigan daily from one end to the other, so they get to kind of be all part of the the mitten, if you will. So
you're all over.
But yeah, I am. And outside of work, second is hunting and fishing. I mean, being part of the Michigan outdoors has been a huge part of my life since I was, tall enough to be able to go out with my dad at 5 years old and fishing and hunting to, I'm 35 years old now. So I've kind of been part of a lot of, whether it be in the lakes or in the woods, and, kind of brought us to this point. And I've listened to your podcast, Aaron, and it's been a pleasure to get invited to even do this. So yeah. I'm open to what you guys got. And, one of my goals, I think we talked about, one of my goals here is to try to iterate some possibilities for Michigan hunters to change the attitude of it being tough to hunt, or the deer aren't big enough, or there's not enough land. That's something that every time I hear that, it kind of makes me cringe, because I have been fortunate to hunt a lot of other states, and I still think Michigan's one of the greatest states in North America to hunt. And I just hope people, and I think I can help talk and come up with some ideas for people to be able to do things a little bit different, to be more proud of where we are and hunt the mid-Michigan high-pressure deer.
Yeah, and I think Justin and I both can relate to you. I mean, he grew up in upstate New York, which, from my understanding, I've never been up there, but Justin grew up there, and from what he's told me, a lot of what we do in Michigan is how he grew up in upstate New York as well, and him and I talk on it, regularly, of how he grew up to I, and it's very similar. And Pat, you and I live like basically neighbors. You and I've never met, which is pretty crazy, but we've hunted the same areas and done a lot of the same things. So I think this is going to be interesting and a good conversation, and I kind of want to gear it towards the Michigan thing. I do want to get into some mindsets, but also get into management practices and things that you do to gear up for the fall in the later season. So definitely something that Justin and I are going to be able to relate to. And I can't wait for this one, man.
Super.
Well, cool. Let's kick it off here. And, I guess where I want to start and is basically, what are your goals when it comes to hunting Michigan whitetails? Like, is it an age structure? Is it an antler size? Is it, what is your goal? It could be amount of deer you kill in a year, or, just successful encounters. Like, what are your goals? Sure. And how do you weigh them out?
Well, that is a good question, and that question alone could last an hour, so you got to shut me off at some point here.
Yeah, let's keep it to
I will hit to I can keep it to some key reasons and what I consider success or my goals. It's not necessarily inches or I got to be. I have a wife that also she kind of that whole if you can't beat them, join them attitude.
Yep.
So she joined kind of the hunting world, soon after her and I met, which was 14 years ago. And, so a lot of the success and things here locally revolves around, her hunting as well, so, when I think about our goals, it isn't just me, but my personal goals, on my properties here in mid-Michigan, whether it be Clare County, Isabella, Macomb, I do shoot for that 3 and 4 year old deer. I'm not getting carried away trying to think I'm going to kill 150 and 60-inch deer. That's great, but that's not in my mind realistic. I think that, when I do all my preparation and all the things that I do year round here, it's to focus on harvesting a 3 to 4 year old deer at this time. That might get better as, 5 years down the road, but, I think we've already done a good job where, we're seeing, I know you guys have seen some of the deer killed in Michigan in the last 2 years, and really in this last year was something special. There were some beautiful deer killed in the mid-Michigan area, and I think that's that's just from what a lot of people are growing to do. And I think that my goals are mature deer, but my goals are also to try to have the best herd that I can try to manage on my mid-size farms. My farms are from 40 to 150 acres. So you do what you can with what you got, the best you can.
Yeah.
So, my goals are definitely my bucks are to harvest and try to get them to 3 and 4 years old. Now with that, comes a lot of things, your doe managements and stuff like that we focus on. And, there's no arguing anymore. Our mid-Michigan deer herd definitely needs to be in check. When you go and you see fields with 100 deer in them, in a bean field at night, it's concerning, and you don't see as many people harvesting does. And that's one thing that I think that people could add to their arsenal of trying to do a better job locally, and is to find it in them to harvest does. And if that means eating more venison, different things that you got to get back to doing that probably the older generation was bigger parts of. Everybody's out to shoot a big buck today, but they're not about taking the 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 does every year either, because they don't know what to do with it, or they don't have if it is processing, if it's the cost and that sort of stuff. But, we're big advocates of managing your doe herd, and we've seen that come back around. And I know that if we wouldn't be shooting the bucks that we do on our farms, because we just have too many deer.
Right.
And that's never a good thing. The fishbowl effect it never works out. So
yeah, and that's when you're to go back to talk about you're shooting for a 3 or 4 year old. I mean, I'm right there in the same boat, but it didn't happen overnight. It's been a progression. I remember talking to Justin not too long ago. I killed a buck in 2008. I believe it was 2008. It was 105 inches, 8-pointer with my bow. First buck I ever killed on camera, and I felt like I made it. I did something. You know what I mean? Like it goes it goes in steps, it goes in progressions, and now, here 12 years later, whatever, however long it's been, it's I'm not trying to do an inch thing, but that does get brought into it a little bit, and I'm not saying that that's my goal, but it is the world that we live in now. And it's like,
sure.
And that's the biggest thing Justin and I talk about, and he can talk a little bit after this too, is like, you're not accepted unless you kill big animals, and they have to have a certain inch on their head. And it's all a relevancy as well, because for me to try to shoot something here in Michigan that's, a 4 or 5 year old, 150 inches, I would never kill a deer, because
right.
It just doesn't happen that way. And Justin can talk a little bit more on this too, because he grew up, like I said, upstate New York, and I don't know if you and I have really talked much about your goals when you were growing up the last couple of years when you were in New York before you moved to Iowa. If you want to talk a little bit about that, Justin.
Sure. Like Aaron said, there's a lot of similarities, I think, in the mindset that you guys have up there of what's realistic, what the expectation should be for a whitetail hunter. And, I've been to Michigan. I've seen what you hunt, Aaron. Like it was a turkey season, but you've got just as much ag as we do. Like we're big dairy country. And I know up in the UP, you guys really resemble what the Adirondack Park looks like with old growth, big boreal forest timber. And it's just vast. Like you have every opportunity, not opportunity, I would say, but like you've got a good variety of habitat for a white-tailed deer and within one state. And just you can go up to the UP in that big timber, and you might find a 8, 9, 10-year-old buck that's going to go 150, 170. You might see one in your life, or have an opportunity at one in your life, just like in the Adirondacks, or else you can hunt the ag land, further south, and blend in with the Orange Army and do the drives with all your buddies and the family, and if it's brown, it's down. But I say that loosely. I don't mean to say like we're all out there just shooting every fawn that runs out, but
well, that's how it used to be, though, too. I mean,
yeah,
it was,
but
things have changed a lot, and I think Aaron will, you can see it, and I know you're gone a lot these days, during the what I call the harvest season, because I consider deer season all year. I guess that's I'm kind of funny, but deer season to me is 365 days a year. So I just have it broke up into, harvest season to me is when that's the time of the year that you actually harvest the deer that you're going after. But I'm hunting them all year long. But, things have come a long ways and progressed. I mean, go back 5 years, and for someone to say that I was going to kill, consistent Pope and Young deer in Michigan, it wouldn't even most people didn't even know what Pope and Young meant.
Right.
So, things have come a long ways in even a short period of time. And I think that is due to a lot of things like these types of podcasts to give people a better understanding on how to get deer management programs or deer to the next age class. I mean, a deer does a really, deer to me are the most remarkable. I mean, I love, Mother Nature can do some awesome stuff, but whitetail deer are remarkable if you actually know them and study them and learn about them and all the stuff that goes with it. It's something, but a deer can change a lot from that 2 to 3 years old, and from 3 to 4, it's a whole different animal. And I think that people are starting to see that. And I think that, people knowing that on the next section that, they heard that the neighbor killed a 145-inch deer, 125-inch deer, it gives him hope and it gives him some belief that it can happen. And I think that that's happened in mid-Michigan. And I do see a bright future, with, getting to that next age class rather than the 1 and 2 year olds that are getting killed traditionally.
Yep. Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah. And I might have to go off script here because we hit something in me that I'm passionate about, and I think all three of us are as well. And what I kind of want to go off script with here is, we're talking about, 5 years ago it was different. Now let's go back to when I said 2008 and 2009. Back then, when I shot that deer, that 105-inch 2.5-year-old 8-pointer that was the biggest deer ever to me, like then there was no such thing as score to me. I never knew I knew what score. I mean, I've heard it talked about, but it was never like I got to get back to the truck so I can score him up. It was just like, man, I just did something with my bow. And that was actually the first deer that I got on trail cam in the summer, and I said, I want to try to pursue that deer, that one deer. Now, I wasn't going to pass up a whole bunch of other deer just to kill that one, but just so happened, I tried to hone in on him, move my stand to get closer to where I think he was bedding, and he walked by the first night after I hung it. And that was really cool to me. And then, the following year, I did it again with a deer a little bit bigger. So then it was like a progression, a steps in progression. But to go back to talk about, and we talked about a little bit off record, Pat, is like the social media side of things. I think it's good and bad. There's good and bad. There's bad in the sense of, you're only accepted if you kill something big. I think that's a bad thing. Definitely. But I think there good come out of it because people will post pictures like, I passed this deer tonight,
Correct.
Or the MI buck pull page. I like it because yes, right. You do get a lot of people out there that probably, they're shooting little basket rack 8s and stuff like that, which is totally fine.
Sure.
You never know what that person is going through in their life. And that could have been their biggest deer. That's great. But I also like to see the pictures of the 140s, 150s, 160s, and bigger, because that gives people, like you said, hope. And it's like, okay, the social media could be good as well to say they are out there. They're there, and it makes me, it lights a fire in me because I'm like, okay, I want to go find one of them. You know what I mean? Like, right. I want to better myself. And it's not like a competition between me and you or me and the next guy. It's a competition between myself. And that kind of came out. Justin and I talked about it. The deer I killed in Iowa this year, deer of a lifetime for sure. And I said it in the episode I was in. I put so much pressure on myself that week because it was an internal battle with myself. Because I'm a competitive person, and it was not like I need to kill this deer because he's the biggest one, and none of my friends have killed a deer bigger. It was never once a thought like that. It was, this is what I was put on this earth to do. I believe that, and this is fun to me. This is exciting, and I have to better myself, and that's how I learn and get better. So I know I went on a little tangent and a rant there, but that's kind of where I'm coming from with it, I guess.
And we had our talk before we started this, Aaron, and it's unique on how many similarities you and I have in the outlook, and I think we're really close to the same, mind frame, or if you will, the stage of progression in hunting and in this whitetail world that we live in today. I think we're in we have a lot of the same thoughts, and that's fun, and I think that, our topic here is to kind of focus on Michigan. And I'm just passionate about this state, and I don't want to see, the things with the DNR today and the things with this stuff with, where things are going. I think we got to hold together here Out of state's always going to be fun. I mean, I do 2-3 trips a year, you know, and I've killed, you know, I've been fortunate to kill 160s, 70s, 80s, and I killed a 200-inch buck. You know, I've been there, and it's awesome. It really is. But when I come back across that state border and, you know, you get the Pure Michigan sign, I'm excited to come home. You know, I've seen some things here in Michigan, and I have been able to grow my areas to the point where you can see bucks fighting. You can, you know, consistently see bucks fighting. You can see the grunting, the chasing, the snore wheezing, the different, you know, ways to, you know, the deer interact with each other. And I think that that's something that I know that I don't have the best places to hunt in mid-Michigan by any means, but I've been able to help that area get better. And I think other people can enjoy that if they do a few small steps to get away from what they've done in the past. You know, when you ask, you know, back to your question, you know, what goals are, you know, goals to somebody need to start somewhere. Your and I's goals started when we were younger to shoot an 8-pointer. Then it was to shoot a CBM buck, you know, commemorative bucks in Michigan qualifying deer, which is 100 inches with a bow and arrow. You know, then it gets into Pope and Young, and then, you know, it continues to grow because we are competitive with ourselves to get to that next level. Once you've kind of been there and done that, though, and I'm not, you know, I got some T-shirts, but I'm starting to come back to that. And I was told by a friend of mine that one day you'll get to this point. And this particular guy has the most impressive, you know, for antlers. I mean, his that I've ever met. You know, he's got, I forget how many we counted, deer over 150 inches, but it's like 25. I mean, he's done it. But he kind of gave me an idea where I was in the growing aspect of all this as a hunter, where you're going to get, and then what you're going to, you know, basically take a couple steps back. And I think I'm at that point now, you know, where if you'd asked me if I really cared about the Michigan stuff as much as I do today, 5 years ago or 3 years ago, I probably would have told you no. And now it's kind of like, you know, I just hear so much negativity about Michigan that I want to turn that around to where people can become excited about it. And I think there's a lot of ways that, you know, further we get into our conversation that I can help them maybe with some ideas, you know, on how to find better land, on how to possibly look at the state land that we have here in Michigan. We do have some of the best turkey hunting. You know, it's funny, go down to hunt in, you know, southern Indiana where, you know, there's good deer hunting, and the guys, they don't really care about the whitetail deer down there, but they want to come up and hunt our turkeys. And a lot of us up here, we see, you know, it goes back to you want what you can't have. You know, we have turkeys in every field, but you can have such a great time turkey hunting. And that's another thing that, you know, we have to as people to gather together and get out there and enjoy what Michigan does have to offer. Yeah. And it is year round. It's year round. It's salmon fishing in the summer. It's, you know, we've got a tremendous opportunity here in Michigan where we think about Iowa, you know, I killed a 200-inch deer in Iowa. It's the greatest place ever to killing big whitetail deer. But you can't catch a king salmon there.
Right.
You know, So, you know, not taking any away from it, but you can't, you know, we have an opportunity to turkey hunt, bear hunt, salmon fish. You know, if you like to fish the rivers, you know, we have a tremendous state that, you know, but to stay focused on the whitetail side of things, you know, that's part of why I am excited about this conversation, was just for a few of the things that I think that I can help the listeners understand in mid-Michigan how to appreciate this area better than they do. Well, and a lot of people do appreciate it, but
yeah, you know, and it's, I do have one question actually before we do get into that for Justin. To kind of, I don't know where, I know you're not a Michigan guy, but you're close to it with an upstate New York guy. I do have a question for you. So you've lived out of state now, and this is something actually you and I have never really talked about. You lived out of state. You've killed some really good deer out of state. Do you have a desire to go back to, you know, upstate New York to go whitetail hunting again.
Absolutely. It's not that I turned my nose down to it. That's what I grew up on. I mean, it's not about, like I said, I'm not going to raise the bar with an unrealistic expectation. And I'd be so pleased to go back there and hunt shotgun season and kill a 3-year-old 8-point, that scores 120 inches. Like,
yep.
Be honest, I never shot that kind of a deer when I did live there. So
yep.
I learned how to hunt there, and I'm glad I didn't get spoiled by learning how to hunt with 160-inch deer on every farm, in every county.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, and Aaron, you might agree with me here, and I'm not underestimating or depreciating any white-tailed deer in any part of the country, but if you can consistently, and this is my feeling, growing up here in Michigan it allows us to be tremendous in the Midwest as far as if you are consistently harvesting mature deer here in Michigan at even at 2.5 years old, 3.5, 4.5. But if you're able to consistently do that with archery equipment in the high pressured area of Michigan, and our deer are they're just a different, they're on edge. I mean, you go to the Midwest, and I've hunted Illinois, Iowa, Pike County, all the different, them deer are calmer to me. I mean, maybe they're calmer. And to me, I don't want to use the word easier to hunt, but that has been my experience. And I think being that we grew up in this area, when I do go to the Midwest, my opportunities, go up because of the skill level we've had to obtain here, to be successful. I feel like when you do get down to the Midwest, I've personally seen that. I don't know if that's just, do you feel at all like that?
Well, and it not only if I'm hunting or filming, because I've been filming in the Midwest now since 2012, on some of the best farms you could set foot on for whitetails ever. And my first year, 2012, we were down in Illinois at a farm called the Grigsby. It's legendary. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's giant. It's huge. And I was filming the first 14 sets that I was with someone filming. I saw 140-inch deer bigger in the first 14 sets. Now,
yep.
We could have killed a couple of them, but that wasn't what we were there for, and that's another thing I kind of want to get into. Like 140-inch deer there could be a 2-year-old, it could be. Correct. It could be a 3-year-old. A 4-year-old here in our area or a 3-year-old he's more than likely going to be right around Pope and Young, unless you can get, in my experiences, unless you get that, 1 in 10 deer that he's just special, and a lot of our deer don't make it to 4 or 5 to, make them get to 150 or 160. So yeah, I do agree with that. And I think Justin can agree with that too, because he's been in the same boat I am. And I don't know if it's so much, I think it is a little bit easier, but I think the opportunity is there's more opportunity. And I want to throw a crazy fact out there for you, or, something. The county that I killed my buck in, Iowa, this year, there is more bow hunters in Michigan. So there's more people that bow hunt in Michigan than there are people that live in that county. Now, if people can wrap your head around that, like, I can't remember how many bow hunters there are in Michigan that actually buy a tag every year, but I don't know the number right off my head, but I actually looked it up. There are more people that bow hunt in Michigan than there are people that live in that county. If that's not the first thing that tells you, there's deer in Iowa in that county that without, maybe just seeing a farmer or two, they might not see a car or two a day. It's just because it's just so vastly different.
Sure.
And, the buck that I killed this year was a 7.5-year-old buck. And he was a different animal. He just was. The way he presented himself, the way that he went about himself, he's just different. I mean, in 6 days, I saw 5 or 6 bucks that were over 150 inches in 6 days, and I could have killed 3 of them if it wasn't for a couple limbs and my boneheaded mistake of trying to pull back on a deer when I probably shouldn't have, and got busted. Mm-hmm. But, to your point, yeah, I think it is a little easier, but I think circumstantially, if that's a word, there's some different circumstances too.
Sure. And
so.
No, I just say, so back to my goals in Michigan, not to, drag that out any much further than this, but, my goals here is to have, it's still a great time. It goes back to enjoying what you're doing with your wife, with your friends. I got a large group of buddies that are in mid-Michigan here that, and then with me, I have a career that, that is very important to me. That's, I get a couple weeks a year to slip away. It's not like I can disappear and be gone for 3 or 4 weeks of scouting and get to the other states and do those things. I got to pick my weeks strategically and whatever hunt that might be. But, with our guys that are here locally, we've got a good gang of guys that are consistently enjoying and shooting bigger deer, every year. It just seems to be, it's becoming more common to shoot a 130-inch 10-pointer today than it ever has been.
Yep.
So my goal here in Michigan continues to be to keep helping my deer get older, helping my herd stay healthy, and making sure we're still enjoying it and having fun, and helping some of my other friends and people that do ask me for help, and make sure that I'm still learning to be able to offer them more information.
Yep, for sure.
So that's where my goals are, I guess.
Okay, well, to transition a little bit, I guess the first question I want to ask you, and this is all off script now. We are completely throwing the script away. So, I guess my first question is, and it's something I think all three of us can talk on because I think it gets brought up a lot, is, the first thing I hear is, well, if I don't shoot it, the neighbors will.
Yep.
So I guess, I don't know if Pat, if you want to first take it away, and what's your combat, I guess, to that?
Here, let's start with neighbors. I've always been a people person, not everybody is, but, I've always enjoyed, getting to know my neighbors. And I think that's one of the starting points you got to do in Michigan. Now, let's not try to say you're going to manage or you're going to, be able to hold deer or protect them on 10 and 20 acres parcels. If you're hunting a 10 or 20 acre parcel, have fun doing it. Shoot that 4-pointer, shoot that whatever you're shooting, have at it. But I guess where we're going is the guys that are, hunting 40 to 200 acres is kind of where my information is going to come into play. But so if you are indeed, we'll just use an 80 acres, and you probably got 4 neighbors. You probably got 4 different neighbors. I suggest you start out getting to know those people. I am not a guy that knocks on the door and preaches QDM. I actually think, and these are my opinions, of course, but I don't think that's a good way to start a relationship at all. And I don't even personally agree with, if my neighbor doesn't want to shoot an older deer, I'm fine with that. I support him all day long if he shoots a 1.5-year-old deer. I have no problem. I never, ever have a problem with that, and I never will. Back to what you said, you don't know where people are in their state of mind. He pays taxes. He wants to eat venison. That's fine. Cool. But what I think, if you get out to talk to your neighbors, one of the things to start with, I do think a conversation is too many deer getting killed, too many bucks. Not necessarily how big, but too many. If your neighbor's got 40 acres next to you and he's pounding 4 yearlings off there every year, have a discussion, maybe, talk him, explain to him that killing 2 of them and killing 4 mature does, and quite frankly, you're going to get more meat off of a mature doe than you are that yearling buck. So I think the conversations can start there to help you as a neighbor if you are having tough time with your surrounding neighbors. But communication, helping people understand a little bit more about the age class and pressure, I do think. So when you say the neighbors, you know, of that deer, I think that's a horrible attitude. And I think that a lot of people, if they do say that, you can stop them right in their tracks. I mean, we've all let deer go, but I know that if I have the mentality that if that deer crosses the fence, he's going to die, and I shoot him, 100% chance he's going to die if I shoot at him.
Yep.
You know, if he crosses that fence, he might have a 90%, there might be a 10% chance he survives.
Yep.
You know, and then when you do see him on your trail camera in January, you're going to be, you just can't have that attitude. And attitude's everything in life, whether it's your job or sports or whatever you're doing. Attitude's important. So that's a bad attitude. That's just a bad outlook on stuff. So having that is not good. But having a fair relationship with your neighbors, and if you don't have it, and your neighbor's just that guy that's going to be difficult, he's going to invite everybody and he knows out to his property because he might just be a generous guy, and they're going to bang a lot of deer. Well, you got to do something different. You got to do something different. And I mean, move. You got to go find a different area if you are trying to shoot bigger deer.
Yep. If you have the ability to do that, though, I mean, not a lot of guys have the ability. Sometimes you might just have to bite the bullet and just say, okay, well, he's going to be that way, and I just have to, and that might be something where it's like you have to grit your teeth a little bit more and figure out your property a little more, and then maybe go into, maybe some management practices like TSI or something, and trying to hold your deer a little bit better and that's kind of when it gets fun for me too. And it's just like, making the land a little better and making it more, I guess, obtainable or more, appealing to the deer to stay there, I guess.
Well, I was in a little rabbit hunting tournament today that some buddies put on, and I was out in an area that I know really well, and I'm not going to, but what you're talking about too, if you do have that area and you do have that 40 acres and your neighbors are high pressure, if you do protect your 40, I can assure you that biggest buck in that area is going to end up on your property.
100%.
If you have,
guaranteed.
If you put some effort into the bedding ground and you do have some sort of area where he can call home, that deer will naturally find that 40 acres if you do the best job you can of low pressure and not going in there. I do believe that you can, even with that neighbor over there doing what he does, there's a chance that he might get over. But if he's, and I do say this even on my bigger pieces and my neighbors, if they want to shoot that younger deer, let them. I'm not even hunting that deer. I'm hunting a different deer.
Yep.
And so there's always usually, even in these high pressured areas in Michigan, in mid-Michigan, you take an average mile section, there's going to be 3 or 4 3-year-old deer, at least good 2.5-year-old deer. And I believe that if you do have that area, them bucks are going to find your protected area where he can call home, but you got to be careful. And that goes back to, I know we're going to hit on another topic here about sanctuaries. And if you can create your 40 acres and make that a sanctuary, the deer don't know what property lines are, but they do know what a safe haven is. And if they can find that spot and you don't consistently bump him out of there, then I do believe you'll be able to have an opportunity greater than your neighbor will. And, so yeah, back to the attitude that if it jumps the fence, it's going to die. That's just a bad attitude.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And, I think Justin will probably agree with that as well. And, he comes from a little different area too, because he hunts public land. So he's I mean, you can speak a little bit more on that, but you're rubbing shoulders with people out there.
Yeah, and I've been lucky, and I don't know if this is because I'm finding good places or if people just don't bother going, but I haven't really had too many encounters with other hunters on public land in Iowa for the last 2 years, but I did teach myself a hard lesson this year, and I passed up a buck that literally I could have dropped an arrow on. He went, his ass touched the tree that I was in as he walked by.
Pat, this is a deer that you and I wouldn't pass up. He screwed up.
Yeah, and it's that expectation thing. And I mean, I had seen 3 different bucks in there in 3 days in a row, and I was like, man, they just keep getting better. And I had some encounters in this particular place last year, and I don't know. I even told Aaron like a couple days later, like, I screwed up. I should have shot that buck.
I'm going to hit on that. You know, we're off subject. This is just going, but this is great.
Do what you got to do.
What you're talking about right there is something that, if you shoot a deer, think about if you shoot every good buck you see immediately when you see it, you don't ever really get to watch what a good deer does. And I'll just go back to a deer that we talk about my buddy Jack Bunker, who does, Aaron, he and I hunt the same property. And the buck that, we always have a couple of bucks that we're working on getting to 4, and we're pretty successful doing it, and we find their antlers. We have, we're doing a good job of that. He and I and my wife, Nikki, and there's a buck we called A-frame, and this would have been 2018 season. He was a 3.5-year-old deer, a deer that 5 years ago, I shoot him the first moment I see him. Well, he was 125 inches at 3.5 years old. Gorgeous deer. His brow tine's almost touched in the middle. Just a gorgeous Michigan deer that, but there's an example. We decided let's see if he can slip. And, we find his antlers in January. We trail camera him. We know he's still alive. I have a video that is, and I do video just about everything that I do in all the states I go to. I self-video my stuff, not for broadcasting, just for archive. And I got a video of that deer, a dog and a doe, that it's remarkable. It's absolutely, I have a water hole, and I literally watched that buck chase that doe around that water hole. The count on the video is 14 times. Ring around the rosy. It was he chases her up by me. I could have shot him, but I got to watch him. And I think that's part of what I'm getting at here is, if you just shoot them deer, you don't actually get to watch and appreciate how awesome those moments can be and how cool a deer really is, and hear the noises and see them in their natural way. Well, yeah, that deer makes it through to this year. And now it's a 4-year-old, 135-inch 8-pointer, beautiful buck. Now his brow tines are 8 inches. They almost touched completely. I mean, he's a gorgeous deer, and he was one of our top deer. Well, there was another deer that I had on my hit list that this particular night this year, he was a good, mature, some might use the word management deer. That word to me is kind of goofy, but
it's to me too.
It's a trophy deer. This is a 200-pound whitetail buck with a 20-inch inside spread. He wasn't going to be a great scoring deer. He scored 120, 125 inches, whatever. But this was just a stud deer. We had him on the farm for actually not. He was for sure 4.5, might have been older, but regardless, he presented an opportunity to me, and you always know when a deer's walking away from you from the back, he always looks so big, and he slipped under my tree, and he just caught me perfect, and I said, it's time. That's my deer that I'm going to take off this farm. So I shot him, and he runs off and dies, and, I'm feeling good about myself. My feet are kicked up in the stand, and not 30 minutes later, here comes A-frame, and I got to, as he's coming in, I had this feeling of, that's the deer that I have his sheds. I have this awesome footage of him. I seen him multiple times at 3, just trying to get him to 4. Now he's at 4, and my bow was over on the bow hook, and I just kind of chuckled to myself because I wasn't going to shoot it. You know, I like to kill one buck off each one of my farms, and I was done, you know, and I thought, this is neat. You know, here's an opportunity to watch a 135-inch buck, 4.5 years old, and I got to watch him that whole evening, and I got to see some extraordinary stuff. I mean, making scrapes, snort wheezing, running every other buck that he's seen off. And I was on a small food plot inside the woods, and it was just awesome. But again, back to what we talked about, and if you don't, you know, sometimes letting a buck go, you can get more enjoyment out of that than putting them in the back of your truck. And I think not everybody will agree with that, but I think at some point, if you've seen enough of them or done enough of it, you start to appreciate that. And as awesome as it is, my buddy Jack killed that buck, and I'm happier that he got him than I did. So it was awesome.
Well, and I think, Justin, and I'll kind of lead you here, I think you passing that buck actually did get you more enjoyment and fulfillment because of what happened with you and Allie. Is that, I mean,
Yeah.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah, it's 100% right. I ended up shooting a buck that I saw the first day in there on the first set that I made, but I actually had my wife with me, and we were in the same tree. She was going to be the shooter, and that buck stepped out, and she didn't have a shot, and I had him free and clear broadside at 30 yards with the camera on him with pre-roll, and I was like, there's an extra set of legs and a set of hands. It's on camera. Game over. And I shot him. And I passed a bigger deer, like I said, which was 2 days prior, and I had seen another one that same day, that same morning that I passed the one that was even bigger than him. Like, I identified as my target buck in there, but it's just too hard to call a target buck on public land. I mean,
yeah,
sure, you can go in there and hunt them out and hope for the best and try to figure out one specific animal, but I'm going in there and I'm hunting the terrain, I'm hunting the landscape, and I'm doing what I know how to do as a deer hunter, and I'm taking the first opportunity I get. Like, I kicked myself in the ass for not shooting that one, but like Aaron said, I was able to have that experience with my wife, and it was the first time she was ever with me on a kill like that. It was on camera, and we had fun. It was a great night. She helped me drag it out. We suffered together and had someone there to high five, so it worked out.
And that's been something neat, just to hit on the wife thing a little bit. You know, it's getting Nikki, my wife, into hunting has been it's been hard. It's trying times. I mean, you wonder, you know, you think about hunting, oh, it's guys' time, you know, but, you know, her and I have grown now to the point where, you know, only time she's ever mad if I'm going hunting is if she ain't going with me, you know. And it being part of those experiences, and this year, as a matter of fact, we just put Nikki's buck on the wall a couple nights ago. Got back from taxidermist, and down at our property down in Montcalm County, Nikki shot her biggest buck of her life last year. A beautiful 9-pointer, one of the coolest deer we've ever hunted. A fun deer to hunt. Knew about him for a couple years, and she did it was tough. We'd seen him 3 days in a row. She killed him on the third day, but no, those are the things that make it all worthwhile. And that's part of what, you know, my big picture here of this conversation is, you know, that deer's not a 160-inch Iowa buck. It's a 135-inch Michigan deer, but it can be as good as a Boone and Crockett deer from Illinois. I mean, they're here, and you can have a lot of fun in your local state. Don't get discouraged, and have some good attitude and faith that you can do that here in Michigan, where you're at home.
Yep. No, and I agree. I just had a guy come up to me, I mean, within the last month, and I'm going to hit on 2 points here. And the first one is, he asked me how do I still get excited to hunt Michigan? And, you know, because he knows that I hunt out of state, and, you know, I've done it for, 10 years or so now, and have killed a lot bigger deer out of state than I have in Michigan. And I said, absolutely not. I said, honestly, I haven't been able to hunt a Michigan rut since 2012. And it kills me every year, even though I'm going out doing one of literally the best jobs you could ever have as an outdoorsman and a hunter. But I want to hunt a Michigan rut again. That kills me. And he's like, well, how do you get excited still for hunting Michigan? And I said, how don't I? Like, I'm a hunter. Like,
Yep.
I mean, hunting is my favorite passion. It is the thing that I do every day of the year. The only thing that comes in front of that is my family, and my job is number 2 with it because I do it with my job. So that's goes hand in hand. But, for me, killing a 180 some inch deer in Iowa and getting a chance at killing a 3-year-old 125 inch deer in Michigan, I get the same blackout effect when I get the encounter. I just do. And the day that goes away here in Michigan, that'll be the day that I quit hunting Michigan. I'll never quit hunting Michigan. I can tell you that. It's just because I was born into this. And same thing with upstate New York. You guys have a strong tradition. PA, Wisconsin, Michigan, huge, strong tradition with hunting and deer camps. And, growing up, going out hunting, when you were little, not saying nobody else did that either, but, I was part of a deer camp when I was 5 years old, and I grew up with that. And he just couldn't believe that I still had like the fire to go do it. And I'm like, I love it. And honestly,
Sure.
I've got 2 properties here in Michigan that I've hunted. One I've hunted my whole life. The other one that I just started hunting a couple years ago, and it's a challenging farm. I mean, it's only got 4 acres of timber on it, and I love hunting it. Love hunting it because the caliber of deer that I get on camera and I encounter is been some of the biggest deer I've ever had an opportunity at in Michigan, and that's just and that's a story for itself. But it's unbelievable. I love doing it, and I don't know. And then I guess the second point is this year I had an opportunity to kill 2 great deer, one in Kansas, one in Iowa. Killed the one in Iowa first. He went 186, great deer. 7 days later, I kill a 120-inch deer in Kansas. I've been getting flack, and I wouldn't, maybe hate mail. I guess I could call it hate mail about killing that deer. I guess that's the best way I can describe it, hate mail. But like for killing that 120-inch deer in Kansas. Now people are saying, why would you kill a deer that big or that, that small in Kansas? Why? That was one of them. The other one was you just killed a 180 some inch deer. Why would you kill this one? Yada, yada, yada. And I'm like, first of all, when I saw that deer in Kansas, when I first saw him, he got my heart going so hard. And I knew, we kind of knew what deer it was. He was a 4-year-old. Okay. So he's a 120-inch, maybe 120-inch 4-year-old, 8-pointer.
Yep.
I was going home the next day. Okay, not that was, you wouldn't kill the first deer on the first day, you wouldn't kill on the last. Not a situation like that. We had just killed an 8-year-old buck that morning that I filmed, and now the guy that I filmed killing it was filming me that night. So the story's there. It was unbelievable. It wasn't like, oh, there's just a deer, I'm just going to kill it. It was not like that at all. I was just excited about killing that deer as I did the giant 7 days before that. I'm a hunter through and through.
And you, Aaron, this is a fun conversation. And part of what you just talked about, I can relate to big time because I've been, even since I was telling you before, even since I was old enough to start hunting, I've been called a killer, but I harvest, I eat, we live, we maintain, and we manage this deer herd because of guys like us. But you've killed some great bucks. I've killed some great bucks. I almost think sometimes, we both have been fortunate to kill, I killed in 2016 in Iowa, in Ottumwa, I killed a 201-inch 17-point. Again, a buck that I'll never see. I'll probably never get an opportunity at again. Maybe I will, but at that point, that kind of that been there, got that, it kind of allows you now, if you see and you're happy with that 125-inch buck in Kansas, you shoot it, that you're a hunter. That's what you do. And that's how I feel. You know, I killed a 138-inch 8-pointer in Kansas this year, walking to my stand. And it was a windy morning. I mean, it was the wind was 35 miles an hour. You couldn't even go to hunt that morning. Wouldn't even have been safe to get in the tree. But I wanted to be in my stand when that wind stopped at, about noon, but I wanted to be in there at about 11. So I'm getting back in there. I had about a mile walk probably to get to where I needed to get to my tree. And as I'm almost to my tree, I look up and I see antlers coming quartering to me. Well, and one thing that I always tell anybody to do, when I get out of my truck, I don't care if it's my properties or when I'm out of state, anywhere, when that door shuts, my release is on my hand. And don't ever get caught with your pants down. And I mean that. If you don't put your release on when you enter the woods, my goal is to go to that woods and shoot a deer. That's what I'm there to do. It may not even get to the tree stand to do it, but my goal is to kill a deer. And I'm glad I did. A lot of times guys will throw all their stuff in a backpack on a mile-long walk, and they won't put their release on. I'm glad I had my release ready. Here comes this deer. I see tines. I lay on my stomach. I have just enough time to knock an arrow. And at this point, this deer's, I had to make an educated guess that he was, in and around that 40, 45-yard range. And he went behind one tree, and it gave me an opportunity to stand up as fast as I could while coming to full draw. And he stepped on the other side of that tree, and I was able to put a great shot on him. And again, that wasn't what, when I bought my Iowa tag and Kansas, when I went to Kansas, I had this ideas of killing a 160, 170-inch deer. But that experience alone got me as excited or more than had I been sitting in the tree watching a 160-inch 10-pointer walk up and shoot him. So all of those things boil down to us being hunters and appreciating the moment. And it doesn't always need to be about how big that buck is. Yep. It's the experience. I mean, how many times do you walk into your stand and shoot a deer, on the ground with you at 45 yards? I mean, it was awesome.
Not very often.
But that can all come back to Michigan, And one thing I do, people that are listening to this, if they're in our local area in Michigan listening to this podcast, that maybe don't go or haven't had an opportunity to go out of state and hunt some of these other areas, it is a great experience. There are tremendous opportunities, and it's neat to see new parts of America and go out and do it. But you can also have a tremendously awesome time right here locally. But if you're not having fun with it, or you're getting your butt kicked, or your neighbors are bad news, you got to change. You have to be willing to change, starting with your attitude. But then you got to go knock on doors and talk to people, communicate. The state land today, I mean, we all know with mobile setups, you can get into some of these great places in Michigan state lands, and with Onyx Hunt and with GPS today, and with a good attitude and a little bit of hard work, you can get yourself deep into these state lands where people don't want to go traditionally. And you can have some great hunts. I mean, one of my closest buddies this year who's, really taken the hunting public and mobile hunting to another level. I was able to be part of something incredible this year of skinning and packing out a 145-inch 8-pointer killed in around our area on state land, on a pack-in, pack-out hunt. And to me, he proved, and this is a guy that has 3 kids, a family, works hard, doesn't have a whole bunch of extra money to go around and lease land and do things, but he had a good attitude, and he's tackled the state land, And just for the people and the listeners tonight, know that here you have opportunities if you put effort into it. And effort is number one. You got to be able to put in the effort. And if that means going and knocking doors to get to know, there's a lot of people that if you stop and talk to them today in Michigan and offer them $1,000 to rent their land, whatever that might be. And if people think that's too much money, I know that there's some very large names in the hunting world that say you should never rent land and, blah, blah, blah. I have my own opinion there. Renting land's a heck of a lot cheaper than owning it. And, creating that relationship between you and the landowner, by just going out and communicating, you can find good land in mid-Michigan, but you got to put in the effort. And if you're not having luck where you're at, you have to change. And if you don't, you're going to be frustrated and you're not going to enjoy it. And you're going to say, I can only have fun if I go out of state and hunt.
Yep.
Well, you can only go out of state 1 week a year if you have a, kind of a, what we call a normal job that you only get a couple weeks off. So, or you can have in Michigan, which I do think our seasons are a little long, but, or you can have fun here for 8 months out of the, or 8 weeks out of the year, so.
Yeah. And I agree. It's, for me too, hunting Michigan is convenient as well. It's right here and it's relatively cheap for me. I have a lease that I do pay for here in Michigan, but I also have some family property that I'm fortunate enough that I just get permission and I can hunt it. So that's awesome too. I have been wanting to do the public land thing. I've never hunted public land. I've never really had to. I've had to hunt public land really, but I've scouted some public land in our area. Really wanted to dive in, but then when it comes to summer, when I'm getting cameras out and getting pictures of deer and everything, I have better bucks that I want to chase on private land, and then the public land always goes to the wayside. So it's like, why would I, and I have a 2.5-year-old daughter and a wife that has a crazy schedule at work. She's a nurse, she works a lot of hours, and I have, I can get babysitters if I want, but also my job. Like I'm leaving October, usually around the 20th, and I don't get back till Thanksgiving. So it's like, where do I really want to spend most of my time and money and, my sweat equity? And then, there's always times where it's like, well, if I'm sitting somewhere else, like if I'm on public land, well, I could be sitting in my private land stands, and maybe, it's that give and take that I have. I'm in kind of a unique situation. Like a lot of guys, I would love to be the guy that could sit back until, last week of October and then hunt my butt off for 3 weeks, throughout the rut. And then, and wherever it be, I would love to be that guy just to keep the pressure down on my farms. I'd love to be that guy, but I've really changed how I've really approached hunting in the last 3 or 4 years and how I hunt differently, because this new farm I told you about, that's only, there's 4 acres of timber on it, but one is a 3-acre patch and the other one's a 1-acre patch. So, access is kind of hard because it's always going through like a fence row or a field edge. So it's like, you really got to change how you hunt, how you access it. And, in the pressure, you got to keep it low. You got to strike at the right time. And it's really taught me a lot of different things and really grown as a hunter, because the last 2 years I've had some opportunities at deer that I never thought I'd have opportunities at in Michigan on small acres that, a lot of people would never really realize. And you might, in the middle of a section, you might look at 4 or 5 trees that might take up about a half acre, but that half acre at the right time of the year is probably a really good hot spot. And it, not a lot of guys look at that. So that's what I find so fascinating about it as well.
Well, we can bump into that with that again. One of our main topics here you just started to talk about, and that's in and out of, our properties. And for those that are listening, that, one thing that I like to think I have not perfected, but I've tried my hardest to perfect is the pressure on my properties. 365 days a year, I treat it like it's opening day. I know it sounds crazy to some people, but it doesn't matter if I'm on my properties or my buddies are with me, or we're shed hunting, or we're planting the food plots, or we are hanging tree stands. You don't slam your doors on my property. We use, you talk in a deer voice, which we all know what that is, but that even goes for June and July, or even when, tomorrow is going to be a great day to shed hunt. When I'm out there, I'm still extremely cautious at any time that I step on my property, of paying attention to that. And I think that if you're not, I think you should start, because if you underestimate what a deer knows, remembers, can hear, you're crazy, because that deer that's bedded, if you're not talking and you're not being loud and obnoxious, and if you're just, using what I call a deer voice, and that deer will lay there, and I know they will. I've seen them do it. And I think it's important that no matter when you're on your properties, that you are treating it like you're going hunting. And it might sound a little goofy, but that's something that I pride myself on our properties, is how quiet I keep them, even in the non-harvest season. I think that the more comfortable you can allow them deer to be, the more time they're going to spend on your property. And that'll give you more time to either A, let them get older, or B, be able to harvest them if that's, what your goal is at that time, because he or she has been comfortable there, because they haven't been irritated. And deer they hate people. I mean, it's just they don't like them, and I can understand why. But I think that when it comes to your properties, you got to treat them with respect, even if it's a 40 or even, we have 150 acre pieces, but you got to go into them and you got to be careful. And I think you need to do that year round. I don't know what you guys think about that, but that's how I've always approached my properties. And some of my buddies, if they haven't been there before and might shut a door hard, I have to give them the short and sweet talk about, being careful.
Don't do that.
We don't do that there. Yeah, that's just not done. And those things I try to get better at as I go. And even if we're hanging tree stands in April or May, it's not hooting and hollering or screaming that I need the chainsaw or you need to do this or that. You're doing it all in and out of there as quick as you can. And, we talked about, we're going to talk about sanctuaries, and I consider my entire property a sanctuary. Obviously we have core areas that we really try to protect, but I treat the whole property like it's a sanctuary. When I check my trail cameras, it's done strategically. When we're tracking deer, it's done strategically. I mean, everything's got a plan, and it's all executed with limiting the sound and the noise and the human scent and human pressure, because in the long run, that's going to keep those deer on your property. Then if you want to do something to protect them from going to your neighbors, start by treating your property like it's a sanctuary, the whole piece.
That makes a good point. So if anybody's listening to this, and if you had some advice for them to kind of go further into this, let's say somebody out there listening to this has got a piece of property that they hunt, and let's say they hunt it with a couple other guys, regardless of the size of it. So there's guys probably with different mindsets, because that happens a lot. Maybe some similarities, but possibly some different mindsets. So when you're going into it, how you say, you treat your property regardless, whenever you step foot on that, it's with precaution and it's calculated no matter what. whether you're tracking a deer or whether you're hunting or checking a camera or, shed hunting it. I guess, what are some of the first steps that, you're implementing to the farm to kind of get it conditioned that way? Is there certain, parts of your farm where you section off or you're like, I'm never going to go in there? Because that's what you hear a lot of times from guys with sanctuaries. Like, the only time we go in there is if a deer goes in there that we have already shot and we need to go get them. That's the only time. Is that how you do that? Or is it literally, if you have 200 acres, that 200 acres doesn't get touched unless it's walking to a stand that might be on a fringe or something?
Well, it's kind of unique. The three properties that I hunt, the one that I grew up on, the farm in Clare, Isabella County and Montcalm County, are all kind of unique properties because they're all kind of similar. There's majority of it is timber, and with some small ag fields that don't really produce that good of agriculture, but they're there, 20, 30 acres of, whether it's beans or corn or alfalfa, whatever gets put in there. I manage the farming rights as well, but number one is how I get in and out of the properties. I take that extremely, and the properties are established. I've been on these properties for many, many years, so kind of my main access points on these particular properties are established for many years ago. But when I did establish them, and I have moved them, I have done things different than I did when I started hunting the properties. But how I get in and out of the property, and how, if you're listening, if you have to have a strategic way you get in and out of your property, because what you don't want to do is bust into the center of your property and have those deer go left and right. I mean, that's the worst. And so you got to, first of all, be able to look at your access points to be able to get in there to stay as far away from those areas where those deer are going to be bedded. And that's what we're all trying to do, right? You're trying to get in daylight or just before, or trying to get out of the property without really scaring the deer. And how we get in and out of our, and that's why I've really been able to hunt what I call the perimeters of our properties. And, it's opposite of kind of what you do on the state land. You're trying to get into the bedding areas and you try to get in, you hit it hard, and you take your chances and you get in there and you wait. I don't need to do that. Aaron, you probably don't need to do that on your farms as much, because we can be patient enough, because we know that the whole property, them deer are comfortable. They're going to slip up eventually and get to the perimeter or the corridor to that food source that you're waiting for them to go to. And, so getting in and out of the property is super important on how you go to your stands and how you leave them. We do things, and I think if you have some friends or you're hunting it with a buddy or in this case, my wife, there's certain inside corners where we do got to get across the field where one of us are going to literally not hunt that night so that the other person can drive the vehicle into the tree stand to pick you up. And I say that, and maybe you guys might agree or not, but I feel a lot safer driving a vehicle, whether, your pickup truck, to that tree stand to pick up that person, bump those deer with your pickup truck, rather than climb out of that tree and try to sneak across that field or, back out to your truck. I think you can do more damage doing that than you can bringing a vehicle in, leaving it running, four-wheeler, whatever, and then leaving in that vehicle. And that's something we've also tried, been very cautious about how we get in and out of the properties. And, morning hunting, if you are a morning hunter, we don't have a lot in common. I don't think there's a, especially if you have a farm that and you're not hunting the rut, I don't see any reason to hunt in the mornings in October. I just don't. I think how many times, especially if you got a decent sized deer population, it's really hard to get into any of our properties because, and I have nothing worse than taking 10 steps into the woods and the whole place erupts. I mean, I've literally been walking to my tree stand in the morning before and took, walked in 100 yards and turned around and walked right back to my truck and went home. I mean, I'm not a morning hunter, and I think that goes a lot to do with how I protect my property. I don't want them getting startled in the morning. We all know how quiet the woods is in the morning, and it's just hard to get in and out of there. Now, if it's November 6th or 7th and you haven't got a buck killed and you think you need to get in there, yeah, that's a time. And I've also, I've went into my tree stand at 3:00 in the morning before and ratchet strapped myself to the tree so I didn't fall out. I mean, you got to do those types of things to be successful consistently.
I agree too. And also, kind of hunting what the land is giving you, taking the land in, however that is, and really analyzing it. So I kind of went against the grain a couple years ago, how, everybody says that there's this written law that you cannot walk through a ag field to get to your stand in the morning. Well,
yep.
And I believe that, I'm like, the deer are out there, and it makes sense. The deer are out there all night hunting, or not hunting, but eating and feeding. So why would you bump them going in? So I took that approach, like, I'm going to go against the grain. I'm going to push the envelope a little bit, and I'm going to try something different. I might fall flat on my face, or I might learn something, and that's the best way I can learn. I went in there early. I got, in the morning, and honestly, it was October. I want to say it was in October. I can't remember, but I'm in a little different scenario. I'm leaving. I don't get a lot of time to hunt, so.
Well, and I'll correct myself. I can't say I'm not going to sit here and say I don't hunt a single morning in October. I mean, there is circumstances that I have done it, but primarily I have gotten away from AM hunting in October if you don't necessarily need to.
Right.
Yep. That's
and mine was a cold front had just come through, so I'm like, okay, I need to get in the stand. And the thought around, I do too much work on my farm and in the off season to not hunt, so I'm like, well, I need to get in there. I had a good wind, and I'm like, I'm gonna get in early. I want to be in, sitting, breathing, just sitting with no sound an hour before daylight. So I got in, and that morning, the deer that I've been hunting, he's a 4-year-old, walked to 30 yards, and I stuck him in the high shoulder, and tracked him for 2 days, and never found him, and he ended up getting hit by a car in December. I encountered him like 6 more times, never could get an arrow or a bullet in him, and and he gets hit by a car, on the side of the road where coming into my farm, and even more salt to the wound. I got a salvage tag to go, pick him up after work, called the DNR, did my due diligence and all that, got there, and he was scalped. Somebody had already cut his antlers off. So
that wasn't meant to be.
It wasn't, no. But that's just one thing. It's like, okay, I learned something there. I went against the grain. It was a standing bean field. And I busted one deer that I know of going in because I'm guessing it was a doe. She blew, and I got to, so every time she would like kind of blow and I could hear her walking, I would move, and I would go be calculating and slow. She couldn't see me. It was dark. She couldn't smell me. So for all she knew, I was a coyote, and got to my stand, got up, and she actually walked underneath me at daybreak. So she had no idea, because I could hear her. She only was 40 yards away. And so there's just different ways just to adapt and just kind of, hunt it the way the land gives you too.
And talk about getting in out of your stands morning or night. Something that I've added to my program, and I can't, I'm not sponsored by any of these manufacturers, but I purchased an electric, because I'm on a bean field on my one property, and my one stand that is very productive. You can get in there really nice at 3:00 in the afternoon, but trying to get out of there at, a half hour after dark, it's difficult. And if I don't have Nikki or one of my buddies that comes at me and come pick me up with a pickup, I'm stuck in there trying to figure out a way to get out. And this year, I borrowed one the year before, and then this year I bought one because I wanted to make sure. Well, I'm dead set on electric bikes. I don't know if you guys have been using them at all, but if you got to get in or out of somewhere where there's deer and you need to, I literally have found that you can ride past those deer in an electric bike and they just look at you. I mean, they bound off. I can't say enough good about them. I mean, and we found other tools, other reasons for them. They're great for track and trail cameras. In Ohio, we lease some land in southern Ohio. That's, if you guys been down around that southern Ohio area, but the mountains they're tough. And, without a bike, and now that we've had the bikes, those have made a great addition to our program. And so anybody that's struggling to get in and out of properties walking that doesn't want to, look into the electric bikes. I think they're a good tool to add to your program. They're expensive, but they're worth it.
Yeah, and we do the same way. When we're traveling, we actually have electric Rangers, and we've drove by deer. It's unbelievable how quiet they are.
It's crazy. Yeah. They just look at you, and I think it's because it's a consistent movement. It's not making a lot of noise, and they can kind of tie it into farm equipment. We've all seen deer, how they react around farm equipment. They don't care, and I think that them bikes are a consistent movement. There's not a crunching, it's a consistent tire rolling, and it's dead silent. And you cut across a hay field or a bean field a half hour after dark, I'll promise you will bust less deer on that bike than you will trying to walk.
Yeah, I agree, man. Yeah, all good points. I hate to cut this off right now, but we are, getting lengthy here. We're at an hour and a half. And maybe we'd be able to do this again and get a part 2 going out. But I think we got a good foundation and a good start. We went totally off script, so none of the questions that we really had were answered. But we had good conversation going, so I wanted to go with it. But I just want to say thanks for coming on and doing this, man. And we're gonna have to do a part 2 for sure.
Well, I appreciate it, Aaron, and I think it's great what you're doing, and hopefully people take some positive out of it. I think if anything, be open-minded to change, go outside the box and communicate. And if you're not enjoying where you're hunting or how it's going on the farm you're at, change, do something different. Don't stick to doing what you've always done, because you'll get what you've always got.
Yep. I appreciate that, man. Good words to live by there. And again, thank you for coming on and doing this, and we'll do it again for sure.
Stay in touch. Thanks.
All right, there it is. Another great podcast. Thank you to Pat Jesse for coming on and really diving deep into some conversation around Michigan hunting. And we got a little off script. That's all right. I think it was a pretty good conversation. Hopefully everybody can take some positives out of it. On a side note, thank you for the downloads, the subscriptions, and everything. Go to our Instagram and Facebook, like them, please. Spread the word about the Fall Podcast. I really appreciate it. If you guys like us, go to iTunes, leave a 5-star rating, and leave a little comment in there. That'd be greatly appreciated. So thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you here next week.